Welcome to Innovating Clinical Trials, the podcast designed for clinical research professionals eager to deepen their understanding of clinical trials through concise, insightful segments. Join your hosts, Eves and Ted Trafford, as they uncover the core issues in clinical research, reflect on the industry, and challenge conventional wisdom.
Hey, Liam. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. I'm actually thrilled to be back simply because I'm not a great, as mentioned before, I think, I'm not a great fan of heights, and I decided in my infinite wisdom to go and climb a 3,200 foot rock face. What's called scrambling, I've now learned, and basically what that means is without ropes.
Oh my goodness!
So it wasn't.
That's insane.
It wasn't quite a straight rock face. It was one of those where there's smaller rocks to jump on, but at one point looking over the edge of a ridge with a 300 and so foot drop on either side, I definitely felt like I needed ropes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I can just imagine that you're so focused on the act of climbing, and then to pause and actually look down. I'm sure my head would be spinning.
Oh yeah, I must admit that I during, because it was about a 10-hour event, about 8 hours up with some rest points and 2 hours down. It was I must admit that I didn't think all that much about work whilst I was doing it for obvious reasons. So it was a good break.
That's incredible.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you made it back safely.
So, but one of the things I was thinking about on my drive back, we speak about this often, is this idea of enrollment isn't recruitment. And I wanted to share some thoughts and an analogy that I had, and also get your thoughts on this on that sort of sentiment, if that sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because, when I first came across you posting about this, it made me pause and think about it. So, and I think it's a worthwhile exercise to go through and have this discussion. So yeah, kick it off.
Perfect. I've been trying to find, in the spirit of you, an analogy to try and explain it in a slightly different way. So I've got an analogy around like planning a trip. So there's two aspects to this, right? The recruitment and the enrollment. So I'm going to try and bundle these. So recruitment it's like planning and promoting the road trip. So imagine we're organizing a road trip with friends. Recruitment activities are like the initial, reach out promotion of the trip to get everyone excited and onboarded. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to attract attention from our friends to see about interest and commitment to this road trip or to this this journey wherever we're going. And in my mind, this parallels a lot to how recruitment efforts work, because they're effectively aimed at attracting potential participants to consider joining the clinical trial. However, when we start thinking about the actual trip itself, this is more akin to the enrollment process, because what we're trying to do with this is that we're trying to prepare for this journey, where we understand now who's a little bit interested, but there's still a lot of things that we need to do, detailed preparation, the actual journey itself, right, to make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the journey is we've got to plan the route, we've got to book accommodation, make sure the car's ready, we've got to make sure that there's we have to reduce barriers, so that we need to ensure that everyone has what they need. Like, are we going climbing a mountain? We need a different packing list than if we're going to the beach. And we need to make sure that we're effectively making that journey as enjoyable as possible. So, ensuring that, for instance, if we decide that we're going to fly there, that everyone can and is willing to fly, or have we got relevant breaks in the process to make sure that we can, even stop off and pick people up.
Yeah.
Equally, things like we may, to the picking people up, is that's kind of like increasing access, right? So we might arrange to carpool or pick up points to make it easier for everyone to join the trip, or defining the route We need to define and measure the route. We need to measure progress, the miles traveled, manage any issues, car troubles, and so on and so forth. So what was really interesting for me is a really simple analogy there. Ultimately, what it boiled down to was that you need one owner to plan that trip.
Yep.
Because I think that the saying of too many cooks spoil the broth is very true.
It is.
We need one person leading the trip rather than allowing everyone to do a little bit, because then it becomes a nightmare. And I think the same is very true for trials. We effectively need that one person or group that is responsible for enrollment. So in our examples there, we need to ensure that the process is holistic, that it encompasses all activities leading up to the patient's participation, and also points along their journey after they've enrolled. We need to reduce the barriers. So we need to look at, okay, is there a protocol going to be an issue? Is there going to be issues with travel? How are we going to get that for patients, like site payments and so on and so forth? So all of these things, I think, boil up to, a very complex process that ultimately no one is responsible for. So that was my I'm sure there's better analogies, but that was my first attempt.
Yeah, no, that's great. And when you were talking about it, it made me think that, when we look at enrollment and recruitment, and basically, if I understand you correctly, recruitment are the activities to attract the candidate
Correct.
to consider the trial.
Correct.
And then once they've considered it, then enrollment are the activities, the actual steps of going through the informed consent process, explaining the study to the individual, obtaining informed consent, introducing them to everything that is involved with the study. And that's the enrollment process. Correct? Do I have that right?
Absolutely. And I think just to add on that, it's also ensuring that it's things like the study design, so ensuring that it is fit for purpose, or ensuring that we, like, say, for instance, we are looking to optimize the patient profile. We're not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, right? Or, into the analogy of the traveling, we want to make sure that if we're doing some mountaineering, everyone's fit enough to do that mountaineering. So I think that there's almost like the awareness is almost is one part of the process, but it starts earlier with the planning and the strategy, right? Is that we have to make sure, as say, that study design's right, optimizing the patient profile, that we've got the right, we're booking the right trip, i.e. feasibility, and so on and so forth. We've got the right sites in process as well. So I think for me is that, and that's a really good point that you mentioned, because there's multiple parts to the enrollment, because if you just think about what comes after the marketing, the awareness, you've kind of lost, because you need to bring that back to the start so that you're designing and strategizing with enrollment in mind.
Yeah, and the way I'm kind of visualizing this, because I do see some overlap between recruitment and enrollment, and so for me, I kind of view it as a bit of a Venn diagram. So we've got recruitment in one circle, we've got enrollment in another circle. There's definitely overlap, but the way it was bugging me for a little bit, because I was thinking it's really, I think it's three circles. And I think the third circle is retention, because I think retention starts right from the messaging that you put out about the trial during recruitment.
Yes.
And it follows through, like you said, the design of the protocol. It follows through communication with the candidate and how you communicate the study information, how you go through consent, how you introduce the participant to the other members of the team. I think these are all parts of the same thing. So there's definitely overlap between the three pieces.
I do wonder if there's a better way to do it, because we're almost using words that exist in our current terminology, and I wonder whether there's a new way of articulating this to be able to wrap those, and I think you're dead right in terms of those 3 categories. And I do wonder if there is and I've been calling it enrollment process because I'm not quite sure at the minute what else to, but there feels to be something else to explain it.
Well, you know what? Let's just put it out there.
Yeah.
If anybody has any thoughts, let us know.
Absolutely.
And we'd love to hear from you on this.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's almost like an enrollment operating system, or, something along those lines, where it's covering, to your point, much greater than just the enrollment part. But yeah, please, if anyone does have any ideas, throw them out there. Be grateful.
Yep. We need another 3-letter acronym. So let's make sure that we
yeah. There you go. EOS, Enrollment Operating System. Love it. We're in demand of more.
Well, there hasn't been any new ones lately, so we need a new one.